Australia in early morning, and I apologize in advance if like the audio or Wi-Fi is weird. It's
Oh,
just like the whole country does that.
you're so
And
fine.
I'm in between meetings. But I really wanted to talk to you because I love academic research. I'm a sucker for anybody's academic project. I always want to
Yeah.
participate. So thanks for tapping me for it.
Yeah, thank you so much for like wanting to like get involved and participate. And like I just have like always like value, I feel like your, I don't know, thoughts and articulations and like the way that you see like the world and stuff. And so like based on the questions that I sent you, like I don't know how you feel about those because like I don't know if you like got a chance because I haven't posted any of the calls that I've done yet. So it, you know,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have expected you to like know what exactly because I don't really have like a direct thing, you know what I mean? I'm really like
no,
open.
I hear you. And like I definitely wanted to use my time to talk about like recovery and sobriety, like
Yeah.
because it's an axis of harm reduction, you know, and like I love I love that you value my perspectives, and that's really really sweet. When I look back on like the years that we spent hanging out together, like so much of it is like a blacked out blur for me because I was really just like using so many substances and like holding it together somehow. Like I feel like it wasn't like I wasn't like the kind of drug user that like burned my life down and lost all my jobs and didn't graduate and like, you know, I got into trouble. I'm not saying I didn't get into trouble, but like I don't know, it's only like apparent in hindsight like how kind of like out of control I was and like how like consequential that was for my development. And like I spent a lot of time like intellectualizing drug use and like, you know, speaking on recreational drug use, and like to me like it's very clear that like drugs aren't the problem, like people are the problem, like individual pathology is the problem. I find like within like the psychonaut culture and such, it's you can't really discern, right, like who has a problem and who like, you know, doesn't have the ism, as we say. um so like I don't know, like I qualify like alcoholism and like drug addiction as like I said, it's like individual pathology, and like you know, harm reduction looks different for all people. Like for some people it's like only using substances with friends, or like only, you know, smoking weed and not taking hard drugs. And like for somebody like me who like has the ism, right, like harm reduction probably looks like never touching like drugs or alcohol again, because it's just so clear that like I get in over my head so fast with it, and so many experiences, you know, as soon as like drugs are on the table or a substance enters the mix, it just becomes the center of that interaction, right? So I don't know, like I want to like talk for a little bit, and then you could like ask me anything that you can. Like I care about this topic so much, and like I spend a lot of like service, like helping other people get sober, right? So I'm sober in the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and like I was drawn to the program because I wanted to build
Wow,
community
I don't want to
around
interrupt you, but
sobriety.
like congratulations, like just congratulations. Like honestly, my
Thank
heartfelt like
you.
love to you. Like just the most like love and like I have a couple of very close people to me that have gone through the same thing, gone through AA or an NA and like just are like I think it's just a process that I think like could be anybody should do. Like I don't know,
12
keep
steps is
going.
great. Like, yeah, there's 12 steps for every kind of issue. Like, I don't know. I just think it's like a format for, you know, it's a little bit of a guidebook to living. Like, inherently, it's just like mutual care and like community building. And it gives you a format to like just take accountability and like look at your life and look at yourself and kind of like clean house, as they say, and figure out like how you got here. And like, yeah, it's just like massive amounts of free time that other people are giving. Like it's kind of it's like group therapy. It's group support group, right? But it has like a spiritual component to it that really attracted me, because like that in itself is like a little like transcendental, which is like what I saw through drug use, like altered kind of states of being. Um and like the reason I got sober in the first place, it was total accident. I was like trying to impress this girl. I was staying with this girl. I was visiting her across country, deep pandemic, and she didn't drink or do drugs. So I was like, fuck, like I can't drink or do drugs in your house. And like at this point it's like deep pandemic, clubs are closed, like I'm not partying like crazy, but I'm like having wine or like smoking a bowl at the end of my workday or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I can't do that when I'm in her house. and I like fly across the country to see her, and I'm like in a new city. I'm like falling in love. I'm doing all this like crazy professional work. I'm like like shooting my first pro scenes. I'm like looking at like the San Diego sky at night, like feeling like I'm tripping balls because like real life is like so exciting and just like overwhelming. And I was like, holy shit, like I haven't been sober for a week since I was like 14, and this feels so good, like on my nervous system and on my brain. And like I feel like I'm accessing these transcendental states by just like being in my feelings and like remembering what it's like to like be a person. So I was like, I need to stay in this space for a little bit longer and like see what else is revealed, right? Because like I don't know, like I said, drugs have just become the center of things for so long, and I just like couldn't let it go. Like you have this panic. It's like, what happens when I like, you know, push on the brakes? Like what's going to collide to the front of the car? Like I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop using. I couldn't stop drinking, using. And like when I finally did, it was like kind of this God moment. These other good things were happening in my life, and I wasn't like, and I was turned on to like what it might be like to spend like a week sober, right? And so like then after a couple months of not drinking, like I was like, well, I'm, you know, I just moved to LA. I want to meet some new people. And like I met a friend online that goes to AA, and they were like, you picture AA as like a bunch of like drunk dads under the bridge that have like lost their wives and shit, just like you picture it as like gnarly people, right? And like my friend was like, come to AA, like you're in Los Angeles, like everybody's young, queer, hip, likes to party, everybody's artsy, like come to a young people's meeting. So I did, and I was like, fuck, like everybody looks like me, like this is weird. I didn't expect to see all these like crazy characters that I would approach like on the street. um so I like hung out for a little bit, and like, you know, like one of the reasons I love AA is like there's no rules for membership, right? Like people are like, oh, it's a cult. Like it's really not, because it doesn't tell you what to think. Like the only requirement for membership is like a desire to stop drinking. So it's like you can come high, like you don't have to be like all in on sobriety. You can be sober curious, you can be like California sober, like smoking weed, whatever. There's no rules. Like it's really anarchistic in nature. Like it's all about like the group collective consciousness. There's no leadership, there's no dues or fees, there's no like structure of hierarchy or like opportunities for individual glory. Like it's kind of like if it was a cult, they would tell you what to think, they would charge you money, and they would kick you out if you didn't believe in them, you know? But like that's also why I say that it's like, you know, community care in that way, that it's like all about helping one another, right? And it's about like personal service, getting you out of like a general nature of like selfishness, which like drives us to drink. And it encourages you to get to like the root of like the spiritual malady or like the hole that you were trying to fill with drinking, right? And for me, I believe it was like trying to prove that I wasn't afraid. Like I don't know, as children we create these secret worlds, you know, like we're upset, like I was obsessed with like reading and like writing and journaling and like my imagination, you know. And like it's funny because I I think I was always destined to be a drug addict. Like it's crazy like what 12-year-old like knows they're like I was the dare class hero. Like I wrote the best essay and I read it in front of 200 kids, and I read it like knowing at 10 years old that like I was going to try all these fucking substances. Like I just knew like what 10-year-old knows, you know. And to answer your question about media, like yeah, I think like drug use is like, you know, juicy in the media. I think about the music that I was listening to and the movies I was watching, you know. Like I read everything that William Burroughs wrote, and like all the rap music that I listened to was like just very like ooh, like syrupy and just like producing
Yeah.
the effects of being on drugs. But I don't blame the media, right? Like it's not about, you know, there's stuff we can talk about it with like music execs like putting on the like criminal activity encouragement, but I just chalk it up to individual pathology. Like I just knew that this was my path. And the way we qualify it in AA is like we're bodily and mentally different to our fellows, right? So you have like the allergy and you have like the obsession, right? So like the allergy is like your body doesn't react normally to substances. Like as like for me, for example, the first time I smoked weed, I was terrified. I had a terrible panic attack. I thought the world was ending. I thought I was dying, right? And the next day, I'm like, I can't wait to smoke again. And it never didn't get less anxious for me. Like I was always anxious whenever I smoked weed, but I just smoked so constantly to get used to the anxiety and to like conquer the anxiety and to prove that like I could, even though I never had a pleasant time. Like the only time I had a pleasant time was when I was smoking enough to like just be constantly high, and it wasn't like alarming to me anymore, right? Like that's not a normal reaction. And then also like I just can't control what's going to happen to me when I put a drink in my system, you know? Like I can go out to dinner with friends and like, have a couple glasses of wine and go home and sleep in my bed and watch TV show and be fine, right? But then other times I go to the dinner party and two glasses of wine turns into like shots at a different bar after, and then like a different club, and then it's like 5 in the morning and I'm like like surrounded by men around a glass table that I just met tonight, and like the birds are coming up, like, and I just cannot control what kind of night I'm gonna have when the first drink enters my system, right? So like that's kind of like how we qualify like an allergy, like the bodily allergy to substances. And then the obsession is just like everything was centered around it, like I just like you know getting high and staying high was my first priority, like, and I intellectualized it and made art of it for so long, like when I was a young kid, when I was a teenager, I would like take pills and then I would just like journal about the effects in my body, and I would like draw and I would just like write poetry, and like I was with my best friend at the time who like was also experimenting with drugs, and we would just have these like long nights rolling around like in the grass or on my bedroom floor, like falling in love and like experiment with all these feelings and emotions. Like I really accessed drugs to tap into my own emotions and my own feelings, and like I just needed an enhancement to the world because the real world wasn't good enough, you know and like a lot of things that I have to grapple with in sobriety is like, okay, now that we call it the pink cloud, like that initial euphoria about getting sober, once the pink cloud wears off, it's like, okay, wait, I have real life to grapple with, and like the things that made me want to drink are still there, right? Like I'm still me under all of this, under like the cushion, the blanket that I've put around me of alcohol for so long. Like I have to deal with that. And AA gives you like a format in which to like assess your character defects and like take inventory of like your resentments and your fears and like the ideas that made you drink in the first place. And you're in the same boat with like a lot of people, it's like I came in with like you celebrate like your sober time, and like you come in with like another like with other fellows that like are counting days and such, and like I made all of my friends through recovery community because like I was really fragile the first 6 months. Like I knew if I fell into a crowd that was like doing coke on the weekend, I would be doing coke on the weekend, and like you have to have like a willingness and like kind of a thirst for a better life. Like I was so desperate for a reinvention. Like I was so sick of myself. Um that's why it clicked for me. Like you need the willingness and you need the openness, and like you have to want it, and like I have 15 months and it's hard for me to like reach the newcomer that isn't sure if they want to get sober, and that's why we qualify like, oh, you need to hit like a rock bottom, like you need to be so desperate, like you need the gift of desperation where things just can't get any worse. You have to look to AA or like a higher power, because it's a spiritual program. Like it gives you a higher power of your own understanding and like encourages you to like conceptualize that for yourself, and like so for a while like I prayed to the universe, like, and the thing about prayer is like you don't have to believe, but it's better if you do. And like I thought I was an atheist when I came in, but then I was like examining a lot of my kind of like practices back when I was a hippie and when I was like in community with more like spiritual people, whatever. Like I was spiritual. Like I was waking up every day and like asking what I could provide to the universe and what the universe could provide to me. And I was like having these internal conversations as a teenager, And like the big book, which is really interesting, you might want to pick it up. It's fascinating. There's this whole chapter like Two Atheists, and it like and it's like we've all been worshipers. Like you might think that like the concept of God is like so out of reach, but like we've all like worshipped a beautiful sunset or like worshipped literature, like the thing that we like believe in. Like we've made other things our higher power, we've made other people our higher power, right? So I don't know, I was really attracted to the spiritual component after like a brief period of reluctance. And like these days, like I bring like my higher power into like so many of the things that I do, and it's like a real comfort to feel like I can turn bad emotions over and I can like trust a path for myself. And like when I make decisions between me and my higher power, and like that's really comforting for a person that drank over like a sense of loneliness and a sense of like fear in the world and a sense of like not being like properly cared for by my caretakers, like I don't know. And like I'll stop there because like the God stuff like really trips people out for sure, but but I don't know. I just find that if people like stick around long enough, like you might find how it serves you. That's what I tell newcomers. but yeah, like I feel like I have a whole new lease on life, and it's because of like the generous teachings of like my fellows, and just yeah, being open to it. um and like I don't know, I think as you said, like 12 step can help anybody. You don't need to necessarily want to like commit to never drinking again. Like never drinking again was a discovery that I came upon when I realized that like all of this stuff applied to me. I had the ism, and that like, you know, if I went back out there and drank, like I would face like, you know, incomprehensible demoralization because I have a head full of AA and I know that this stuff isn't good for me, you know. And you know, I'm really grateful that I was able to make that turnaround. It's never something that I saw for myself. But I don't know, I'm just grateful that it's so publicly accessible. Like in every city I go to, I can go to like the local AA clubhouse. Like I've been going to queer meetings in Australia. I went to queer meetings in Miami. Like I went to queer meetings in San Francisco, and like met a bunch of people and like went out to lunch with them and like hung out with them all day. You know, I think that like the cultural constant, like I can, now that Zoom is on, like I can hop on Zoom at like 3 in the morning if I'm desperate and I need a meeting. And I really appreciate that. Yeah, like I, you know, and I don't regret all of my time experimenting, right? Like, you know, I trust that there's a path for each of us, and like everything that I've done have gotten me where I need to be now. But I just like, I appreciate the simple things now. Like I think I used to like crave chaos and like high drama, and I just wanted to like, there's this line in the big book that's like, there was never enough of the thing we wanted. And it's like, you never fill up. Like you never, like for me there was never a point where I was high enough. If somebody offered me another line, I was going to take it. Like I would never be like, okay, I'm where I need to be, right? And like I still have that nature of like wanting to fill up on life, like wanting the most, wanting all the crazy experiences, wanting to say yes to everything, thinking it makes me interesting, and being like completely in fear about like who would I be if I said no to things, you know, and admitted a fearful nature and like kept a small comfort zone, you know. Like I pursued drugs because I thought I was going to like touch the boundaries of everything that life would provide through substances. So it's about like, how can I live that full of a life sober, you know? But it's like when you get too deep into drugs, like your life isn't expanding, it's getting smaller, you know? And like through sobriety, I feel like I have a bigger life. I feel like I can face myself. I feel like, you know, I'm cleaning house, if you will, and like knowing myself in a way that I like never was able to. And I'm not limited by anything, you know. Like I feel like staying high is a full-time job. Like it's just like the first thing that you're concerned with. And now all that is like peeled back, and I can just focus on life. Like I can focus on like work and my friends, and like I just don't have any distractions. Like I could be out at the party at 3 in the morning and just dance for 3 hours straight, and like feel completely rocked by like this loud bass speaker that's like vibrating my every toenail, and I don't have to run to the bathroom every 30 minutes to take another line or like worry about when my next drink is going to be. I could just like fade out and like focus on the moment. And like being with sober people is great because I'm like, we can just spend an afternoon and do whatever, and it doesn't have to be like centered around like what bar are we going to go to, who's going to get the drinks. Like I just feel like I'm figuring out how to have fun when like I didn't know how to before. Like substances always had to be in the mix for it to be fun. Here's another thing that I use to sort of like litmus test people's alcoholism. Like, you know, if you're when you're having fun, you're not controlling it, your intake. And if you're controlling your intake, then you're not having fun, you know? Like, and that was so true for me. Like if I went out and I was like, I only have like this like quarter of a gram, or like I'm only allowed to have drinks, like I was so preoccupied with like that limit that I like couldn't let go and enjoy myself, you know. And I just feel like I'm finally like 10 toes down like in the world now, and like it's painful. Like it's painful to like go through life without any like bumpers, right? And like that's why a lot of us relapse. Like I'm really like in the minority in that I only have one sobriety date so far, right? Like a lot of people relapse is like a big part of their story, and like there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing wrong with like going out and like doing more research on whether like you are an alcoholic or AA is for you, or like, you know, experimenting, right? Like I just find that everybody that I've known to go out like comes back, you know, like you come back to the rooms and you're like, I did my drinking, I belong here, you know. And that's harm reduction too, right? Like for somebody that struggles, like knowing that you have like AA to like as a landing pad, like that's harm reduction, you know? Like so I don't know. I think like it's important to kind of like take like a moralizing tone out of it, because like that puts people off recovery. Like, you know, I always would like turn my nose up at like sober people. Like if I was at a party and I met somebody that was sober, I would be like, okay, like I can't relate to you. I can't talk to you. I can't get close to you. I don't want you to see me. And I would look for the other alcoholic in the room. Like I would look for the other person at the party that was like, you know, drinking so much. And I'd be like, do you want to make an alliance? Like you're the person I want to be with, you know? Like that's how I move through the world. And like, I don't know, these days I just I don't know, like there's something to learn from everybody. And it's just like, for me, it was big to realize that like, because I felt like I didn't have a choice in the matter. Like I wanted to stop drinking and using and I couldn't. And like, you know, it's such a relief to know today that I never have to drink again if I don't want to, you know? Like, and there's so much freedom in that. And like, we fear sobriety when we come in as like, my freedom's over, like I'm never gonna have any fun again, I'm just gonna go be like a chamomile tea grandma, like my partying days are done, right? Like that's how I used to think of it. And then it's like, no, like, you know, like there's no, like we need to end sort of like the carceral framework of sobriety, thinking like, oh, you're in the penalty box, like you fucked up your life, you did your drinking, and now you're like in this little holding tank of punishment because you've lost your drinking privileges. Like it's not like that. Like we need to like push back and be like, you know, sobriety is like an expansion of your world, and it's like a privilege, and it's like an opportunity, and it's like a new life, you know? Like now you get to like go out and experience life without this like burden of alcoholism. Like look at all the things you get to do. Like you can show up for the people in your life. Like you no longer have to be like, you know, drunk and unreliable and flaky, and like you don't have to disappoint your loved ones, you know? And like it's a big opportunity to think that you can like see the world through fresh eyes, you know? And like I practice a lot of gratitude for that. Like I don't know, I think AA, like, and the spirituality piece is like it's all about gratitude and like humility and like admitting that you don't know anything, you know? Because it's like our strong wills that get us into this mess. Like it's our best ideas that brought us here, right? Like, and we just like try to like control and manage everything around us by intaking substances because we can't handle life, you know, on life's terms. And it's like I think it's all about like living and let live, and like keeping it simple, and like, you know, sacrificing everything that you thought you knew, like setting aside everything that you like expect and assume, you know. And like, you know, AA taught me like humility in a way that I was just like, I felt like I was just this like angry fireball of like just moving through life, like trying to like, like, I don't know. And now I just can sit with myself, and I can face myself, and I can like look the world in the eye, and like, you know, I can deal with like things like my social anxiety, which I felt was so paralyzing when I first got sober. You know, like a lot of things come rushing at you in the first 6 months, but like you're only going to be able to work with them like if you like stick it out a little bit. So like I'm just really grateful that I fell into program, and I'm grateful to be in like Southern California has amazing recovery, you know, it's not like that everywhere. But yeah, I mean, when I think about harm reduction, I'm just fucking grateful that the 12 steps exist. Out like all of my friends that are like, you know, in and out of the program, and know that like AA is always going to be like a safe place for them to land. So yeah, that's what I had to share. I only have a couple more minutes because I have an appointment at 10 at whatever your time is. But do you have any
3 minutes?
for me?
Are we at 57?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have a couple. I wrote down like a bunch of that I thought of during that. Thank you so much also for just like everything that you just shared. There's like so many different, I don't even like know where to start, but like overall, I just want to like exponentiate the amount of love that I like said earlier, like towards you, and also like this like conversation and like bringing it to light, because like every person in sobriety that I meet is so different, and like all of them bring like such a different story, but at the same time they all have that like bottom line of like, well, there's no what is it, there's no chemical solution to a spiritual problem. And like that has been really like moving for me to just like think about you know, in my like different just thoughts about like my own personal use, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a full question I have to ask you, but I gotta go. Okay, one was, the first one I wrote down was, what would you say to someone who hasn't tried any drugs? So like say somebody like just got to college, right? Which is like when I started doing everything, who hasn't done anything, was worried about trying them because is like, oh, well, I don't know if I will have a problem if I start. So like doesn't do anything because of that worry. Like, do you think that it's possible to like, I guess, self-diagnose before you've even like tried
I
anything
mean,
at all?
yeah, like
Is
the
that a
thing
weird
is, you
question?
don't have to. Like, you don't have to try. Like my friend that like I moved to California with, that got me. She had never tried alcohol or drugs in her life. Like as a child, she was like, I'm never gonna do this. You know. So I would say if you go in fearful and you feel like some kind of social pressure and you want to keep up with your friends, like you don't have to. You know. I would say, like, you know, if you want to, I'm never going to tell you no, right? Like, I just think that everything that you do, like, I just think that in everything, you should only do something if you like enthusiastically want it with your whole body, right? Like, if you physically just like can't wait to do something, then do it. And like, if it makes you nervous, then fucking don't, you know? And then I would just say, like,
Listen to your
if you
gut.
do have, yeah, like if you do push past that point of discomfort and experiment anyways, like still touch base and figure out like if this actually is like something like a state that you desire. I don't know. Like I have no business saying that like drugs are the problem or drugs are bad for all kinds of people, just because that's not useful and that's not realistic. Like it's not realistic within harm reduction to be like abolish drugs. Like drugs are fine. There's plenty of people that can like experiment and like have recreational use without like developing an obsession around it, you know? Like I don't know. So I
Yeah.
would say like you can't really tell until you like try it. But you don't have to if you don't want to, you know.
Yeah. I know it's the 0 o'clock, so we got to go. But I'm also going to send you an article just because you said you like care about research with this. And like, I know that I just want to know your thoughts on it. It's by Carl Hart, who's like one of my favorite academics. So I'll send it to you. And then whenever you get a chance, like to look it over. But I hope you
Totally.
have
And if any questions come up for you, I'm happy to like voice note reply to them if that helps at all.
oh, word. Yeah, that
Um,
would be cool.
but
Yay.
yeah, thanks, Haley.
Oh
So good
my
to see your
gosh.
face.
Thank you. I know you too. I hope you have a beautiful day in Australia. I'm sending you.
Oh, it's so rainy. It's been raining for like 3 weeks, but we're hanging in there.
Cool. That's so awesome. Enjoy, explore. Bye. Have fun. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Haley.